There are voices in the desert that only the loneliest souls can hear. Whispers carried on dust clouds echoing across the mesas where wild Mustangs run free. The Navajo elders speak of those rare few, the soul riders who can touch a horse and see through its eyes, feel through its heart, bridge the gap between worlds. What happens when a stallion who has lost everything meets a child trapped in silence? When a proud Mustang refuses food for days, staring at barn walls with eyes that have witnessed freedom, and a girl who hasn't spoken since her mother's death suddenly finds her voice in his presence. Some connections transcend explanation. Some bonds can reach across impossible distances, defying logic, separation, and time. This is their story. The rhythmic thump of helicopter blades sliced through the morning air, shattering the peace of the valley. A magnificent black stallion raised his head ears, alert nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of danger. Storm leader of the wild Mustang herd snorted a warning. Around him, 30 horses responded instantly, hooves thundering across the sun-baked Nevada earth. The helicopter descended lower metal beast against flesh and blood. Men in uniform shouted through megaphones. The herd scattered their instinctive formation, breaking under pressure. Storm raced alongside a golden mare, her coat gleaming like autumn wheat in the harsh sunlight. Willow, his chosen one, his heart. The helicopter swooped closer, driving a wedge between them. Storm neighed fiercely, trying to circle back. The dust cloud rose, choking and disorienting. Through the chaos, he saw Willow stumble her leg, catching in uneven ground. She fell hard. Storm reared, fighting against the men who now appeared on horseback ropes, swinging. A lasso caught around his neck. He fought wildly, eyes never leaving Willow as handlers surrounded her fallen form. Her eyes, wide with terror and pain, locked with his across the distance. A silent promise. A connection severed. The last Storm saw was Willow being loaded into a separate trailer, her golden coat stained with dust and blood, her eyes filled with a desperation that mirrored his own as the doors closed between them. They say the wild horses carry the soul of the land within them. A deep voice narrated over images of ancient rock paintings depicting horses and human figures. The Navajo people have known for centuries that only those with open hearts can hear their call. These special few, the soul riders, are chosen to bridge our world with theirs, to hear the whispers that dance among the dust clouds. The voice belonged to Joseph Wolfsong, his weathered face appearing as he stood on a mesa overlooking the vast Nevada landscape. When the connection is broken, both worlds suffer. When it is restored, he smiled, both worlds heal. Rain fell softly on a cemetery in Boston. Gray skies matching the somber mood. A small gathering of people stood around a fresh grave, the headstone reading, Elena Morgan, beloved wife and mother. Thomas Morgan, 45, stood rigid in his dark suit, his face a mask of composure threatened only by the slight trembling of his jaw. Beside him, 12-year-old Lily stared at the casket being lowered into the ground, her expression unnervingly blank. Dark eyes dry. She wore a turquoise pendant on a silver chain, her small fingers clutching it unconsciously. As the priest spoke final words, Lily looked up at the sky where the clouds parted momentarily, their shapes resembling a herd of horses racing across the heavens. For a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes, recognition perhaps, or longing. Thomas placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder, but Lily didn't respond. The distance between them spanned more than the few inches of physical space. The sedan moved along the highway, cutting through the vast landscape of the American West. Thomas drove with practiced precision, occasionally glancing at Lily in the passenger seat. She hadn't spoken more than necessary in 8 months, not since Elena's diagnosis had turned their world upside down. "We should reach Silver Creek by evening," Thomas said, breaking the silence. "Your mother always said the sunset over the mesa was something special." Lily didn't respond, her attention focused on the sketchbook in her lap. Her pencil moved in confident strokes, creating the image of a wild horse running free. Thomas sighed, then tried again. "I know this move is difficult, but the clinic needs a veterinarian, and I think we both need a fresh start." In his mind, he saw Elena again the first time they'd met at a medical conference. She'd been presenting on traditional Navajo healing practices that could complement modern veterinary medicine. Her intelligence had captivated him, her quiet confidence and connection to nature, unlike anything he'd experienced in his Boston-bred life. "Did you know your mother grew up near Silver Creek?" he asked. Lily's pencil paused momentarily, then continued its dance across the paper. "She left when she was young before we met. She didn't talk much about why." Thomas adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. "Maybe we'll discover a piece of her there." The silence resumed, filled only by the hum of tires on asphalt and the whisper of Lily's pencil. Silver Creek announced itself with a sun-bleached welcome sign, partially obscured by a newer, glossier billboard. "Silver Creek Building a Brighter Future with Sun Valley Resort." The small town nestled in the valley looked caught between eras old Western storefronts alongside modern construction equipment. Thomas parked outside a diner called Maggie's, its neon coffee cup sign flickering in the late afternoon sun. "Let's stretch our legs and get something to eat." Inside, the diner hummed with local conversation that quieted briefly as they entered, newcomers instantly identified. Thomas guided Lily to a booth by the window, nodding politely at curious glances. "Thomas Morgan, I'll be damned." A tall man in a sheriff's uniform approached, grinning widely. His badge read Sheriff Cooper. Thomas stood, genuine surprise breaking through his fatigue. Sam Cooper." They embraced briefly, Sam slapping Thomas on the back. "Elena told me you might be coming to take Doc Miller's place, but I wasn't sure you'd actually leave Boston behind." A shadow crossed Thomas's face at Elena's name. "This is my daughter Lily." Sam's expression softened as he looked at the quiet girl. "Hello, Lily. I knew your mom when we were younger. She was something special." Lily nodded slightly but remained silent. Sam slid into the booth across from them. "So veterinary clinic's all ready for you. Town's been making do with the vet from Cedar Ridge coming twice a week, but folks are mighty relieved to have someone permanent again." "What's with all the construction?" Thomas asked, nodding toward the window where workers were erecting framework for a new building. Sam's expression turned complicated. "That's the Sun Valley project. Biggest development Silver Creek's seen in 50 years. Resort golf course, luxury homes. Cameron Hayes, the developer, says it'll bring jobs, tourism, tax revenue." He lowered his voice. "Not everyone's thrilled about it, but the town's been struggling since the mine closed." "Change is inevitable, I suppose," Thomas said diplomatically. "Sure is." Sam glanced at Lily, who had returned to her drawing. "What have you got there?" "Young lady." Lily hesitated, then turned her sketchbook slightly. The wild horse she'd drawn seemed almost alive on the page mane flowing in an invisible wind. Sam whistled low. "That's talent. You know we have wild Mustangs in these parts. Maybe you'll get to see them someday." Something flickered in Lily's eyes, the first genuine interest Thomas had seen in months. Horizon Ranch sat at the edge of Silver Creek, its weathered signs swinging gently in the evening breeze. The property stretched toward distant mesas, dotted with paddocks and outbuildings that had seen better days. As Thomas's car approached, an elderly woman emerged from the main house, her silver hair pulled back in a practical braid, her movements deliberate but strong. Thomas helped Lily from the car, whispering, "This is Eleanor Reynolds, an old friend of your mother's." Eleanor's weathered face brightened as they approached. "Thomas Morgan." Elena's letters didn't do you justice. Her voice carried the grit of the desert and years of command. "Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for meeting us." Thomas began formally. "Eleanor, please, we don't stand on ceremony here." Her eyes moved to Lily, softening instantly. "And you must be Lily." She knelt slightly, meeting the girl at eye level. "You have your mother's eyes, child." Lily looked up, startled by the direct connection Eleanor made, as if she truly saw her. Eleanor reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the turquoise pendant at Lily's throat. "Elena's necklace. She wore this when—" She stopped herself, straightening. "You look more like her than you probably realize." She led them toward the house, pointing out features of the ranch. "Started Horizon 20 years ago as a sanctuary for injured wild horses. Rehabilitate them when we can, provide a safe haven when we can't." "It's impressive," Thomas said, noting the careful layout despite the ranch's obvious financial constraints. "It's struggling," Eleanor corrected without self-pity. "But we keep going. The Mustangs need an advocate in these parts." Inside the ranch house, Eleanor poured coffee for Thomas and hot chocolate for Lily. The living room walls held photographs of horses awards and news clippings about successful rehabilitations. One frame photo showed a younger Eleanor beside a handsome man on horseback. "My late husband, Frank," Eleanor explained, catching Thomas's glance. "Heart attack 20 years ago. He loved this land, these horses. Making this sanctuary work was our dream." Thomas nodded sympathetically. "Elena spoke highly of you, though she never mentioned how you knew each other." A complicated expression crossed Eleanor's face. "Elena and I shared special interests. I was sorry to hear of her passing. Cancer Sam told me." "Yes," Thomas confirmed, his professional demeanor slipping slightly. "8 months ago, it was aggressive." Eleanor's gaze moved to Lily, who stood by the window looking out at the paddocks where several horses grazed in the evening light. "Loss changes us, especially the young ones." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of wheels on the wooden porch. The door opened without a knock and a man in a wheelchair entered. Around 55, his once powerful frame now diminished, he retained a certain magnetism in his sharp features and penetrating eyes. "Didn't know we had company, Mother," he said, his tone carrying an edge. "Victor, this is Dr. Thomas Morgan and his daughter Lily. Thomas is taking over Doc Miller's practice. Thomas, my son Victor." Victor Reynolds assessed Thomas coolly before extending his hand. "The new vet from Boston. Word travels fast in Silver Creek." The tension between mother and son was palpable, filling the room like static electricity before a storm. "Dr. Morgan was a friend of Elena's," Eleanor added. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Recognition, then a careful neutrality. "Elena Begay. Now that's a name I haven't heard in years." "Morgan," Thomas corrected automatically. "She took my name when we married." Victor smiled thinly. "Of course she did." The following morning brought a meeting that would set events in motion. Thomas and Lily had settled into their rented house near the clinic, but Eleanor had invited them back to Horizon to meet someone. As they drove up, they noticed an expensive black SUV parked beside Eleanor's weathered truck. Inside the ranch house, voices carried from the kitchen Eleanor's steady tone, countered by a man's smooth, persuasive cadence. "The offer is more than generous, Eleanor. You have to consider Victor's future as well." Thomas hesitated at the door, Lily half hidden behind him. Through the kitchen doorway, he could see Eleanor standing firm, arms crossed, facing a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. Tall, silver-haired, with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way, he exuded authority in his casual but expensive clothing. Beside him stood a teenage girl around 16, with dark hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing headphones around her neck like armor. Her expression conveyed boredom and something deeper, a practiced detachment. Victor sat at the table, his wheelchair positioned between his mother and the visitor, his allegiance unclear. Eleanor noticed Thomas and Lily in the doorway. "Thomas, come in. This is Cameron Hayes of Sun Valley Development." Hayes turned, assessing Thomas with a businessman's efficiency before offering his hand. "Dr. Morgan, welcome to Silver Creek." His handshake was firm, confident. Up close, Thomas noticed the telltale signs of military background. The posture, the precise movements, the assessing gaze. "And this must be your daughter," Hayes continued, his tone softening slightly as he looked at Lily. "This is my daughter Maya," he added when Lily didn't respond, gesturing to the teenager who offered a minimal nod, her eyes briefly meeting Lily's with a flicker of reluctant curiosity before returning to studied indifference. "Mr. Hayes is interested in purchasing Horizon Ranch." Eleanor explained, her tone, making clear her position on the matter. "It would be part of the larger Sun Valley Resort project," Hayes elaborated smoothly. "The property has significant water rights that would benefit the development, and the location is ideal for our equestrian center, which would provide proper facilities and staffing for the horses," Victor added, earning a sharp look from his mother. "And what would happen to the rehabilitation program?" Thomas asked, professional interest overriding his awareness that he was inserting himself into a private negotiation. "Sun Valley is committed to environmental stewardship," Hayes replied with practiced ease. "We would incorporate elements of the sanctuary into our equestrian program, certainly." "Elements," Eleanor repeated flatly. "Not quite the same as maintaining a sanctuary for wild horses that would otherwise be destroyed." Hayes's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened slightly. Eleanor, the BLM roundups are federal policy. The land can only sustain so many wild horses. Your operation takes in, what, 10, 15 a year? That's admirable, but hardly addressing the larger issue. It's addressing the issue for those 15, Eleanor countered. Victor sighed audibly. Mother, be reasonable. The ranch is struggling financially. The buildings need repair. You're not getting any younger, and I can't manage this place from a wheelchair. I've managed fine for 15 years since your accident. Eleanor set her voice tight. The tension in the room thickened. Lily stepped closer to Thomas, her hand finding his almost unconsciously. Hayes cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time. He handed Eleanor a folder. These are the revised terms we discussed. Please review them with your lawyer. He turned to Thomas. Dr. Morgan, I hope you'll consider the veterinary position at our equestrian center once it's established. The compensation would be significantly higher than a small-town practice. Before Thomas could respond, Eleanor's phone rang. She answered, her expression shifting to concern. I'll be right there. She hung up looking at Thomas. That was Jake, my ranch hand. We had a new Mustang brought in yesterday from the BLM roundup. He's refusing food, showing signs of distress. Thomas recognized the professional opening. I'd be happy to take a look if you'd like. Eleanor nodded gratefully. Thank you. As they prepared to leave, Hayes made his final point. One more thing to consider, Eleanor. The water rights hearing is in 3 weeks. If the town council approves our application, Moonlight Creek will be diverted for the resort. That would significantly impact Horizon's operations. Eleanor's face hardened. You haven't won that fight yet, Cameron. It's not about winning, he replied calmly. It's about progress. Victor watched the exchange, his expression unreadable, caught between his mother's principles and Hayes's promises. The barn at Horizon Ranch smelled of hay leather and the distinct musk of horses. Jake, a weathered man in his 50s, led them to the last stall, his concern evident. Brought in yesterday, lead stallion from the Silver Mesa herd. BLM says he was aggressive during the roundup, injured 2 handlers. The stall was larger than standard with reinforced walls. Inside, a magnificent black stallion lay on his side in the straw. Despite his weakened state, his powerful build was evident, a true wild Mustang in his prime, or what should have been his prime. Now his coat had lost its luster, his breathing shallow. Has he eaten anything since arrival? Thomas asked, slipping into professional mode. Not a bite, Jake confirmed. Won't touch water either. Had to drench him this morning to get some fluids in. Thomas entered, cautiously aware of the potential danger despite the horse's weakened state. The stallion's eyes tracked his movement, revealing intelligence, and something Thomas rarely saw in animals, a profound despair. Hey, boy, Thomas said softly, approaching with measured steps. Let's see what's going on with you. He conducted a thorough examination, finding no obvious physical ailments, no fever, no visible injuries beyond minor scrapes from the roundup, no signs of colic or infection. The stallion allowed the examination with eerie passivity, as if beyond caring. Physically, he seems intact, Thomas reported to Eleanor, who watched from the stall door. But I've seen this before in captured wild animals. It's like they lose the will to live. Their systems start shutting down without any medical cause. Depression? Eleanor said, not as a question. Thomas nodded. Essentially, yes. We can try anti-anxiety medications, force feeding if necessary, but if they don't want to live, they find a way to die, Eleanor finished softly. Lily had been standing back, observing quietly. Now she moved closer to the stall, something about the stallion drawing her despite her usual reticence. What's his name? She asked suddenly, her voice startling everyone after so much silence. Eleanor recovered first. The BLM paperwork listed him as Chucker 7294, but we call him Storm because of the thundercloud marking on his flank. Lily studied the horse with an intensity that surprised Thomas. She moved to the stall door, standing on tiptoes to see better. Careful, Lily, Thomas cautioned. He's wild and potentially dangerous. He's sad, Lily said simply, with such certainty that the adults exchanged glances. As they prepared to leave, Lily reached up to adjust her pendant. The turquoise stone caught a shaft of sunlight from the barn window, throwing blue-green reflections. The chain slipped and the pendant fell sliding through the stall bars onto the straw near Storm. My necklace, Kur. Lily gasped, the first real emotion Thomas had heard from her in months. Before anyone could stop her, she had squeezed between the lower bars of the stall, reaching for the precious item. Lily. Thomas moved toward the stall, fear clutching his heart. Storm's head lifted, eyes focusing on the small human suddenly in his space. Lily froze, hand outstretched toward the pendant that lay inches from the stallion's massive hoof. Time suspended as girl and horse regarded each other. Then Lily's fingers closed around the pendant, accidentally brushing against Storm's leg. A visible shudder passed through her body. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating. For a heartbeat, she seemed to see something beyond the barn, her expression reflecting shock, pain, and recognition. She scrambled backward, breathing hard, the pendant clutched in her fist. Thomas pulled her out, checking her frantically for injuries. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? Lily shook her head, her eyes never leaving Storm. He's looking for someone, she whispered. Someone important. Eleanor and Thomas exchanged concerned glances. Storm had raised his head, watching Lily, with the first sign of interest he'd shown since his arrival. Dirty yo. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. The moment her fingers had touched Storm's leg, images had flooded her mind. Flashes of running free across vast plains, the golden mare falling, the terror of capture, the despair of separation. Feelings not her own had washed through her, loss, confusion, a grief so profound it had physical weight. She sat up in bed, turning on her lamp. From her backpack, she pulled out her mother's journal, a leather-bound book Elena had pressed into her hands during their last lucid conversation. When you're ready, Elena had whispered, her once vibrant face gaunt from chemotherapy. This will help you understand. For 8 months, Lily had carried the journal, but never opened it, afraid of what she might find, afraid of the finality it represented. Now, her hands trembling slightly, she lifted the cover. Elena's flowing handwriting filled the pages. Drawings similar to Lily's own horses, landscapes, cloud formations were interspersed with pressed flowers, feathers, and what appeared to be songs or poems in a language Lily didn't recognize. One page caught her attention, a drawing of a turquoise pendant, her pendant with strange symbols around it. Beneath, Elena had written, "The soul riders have existed among the Navajo for centuries. Those rare few who can connect with the spirit of the Mustang, who can see through their eyes, feel through their hearts. The gift passes through bloodlines, but awakens only in those whose spirits are open enough to receive it. The turquoise is our conduit, our protection, our identifier to those who know the old ways." Lily touched her pendant, remembering her mother's insistence that she always wear it. Below the text was what appeared to be a song written in Navajo, with an English translation beside it. "Horse of the dust cloud, hear my voice. I come with respect, I come with choice. Your spirit is free, though your body is bound. In your heart, the wild winds still sound." Lily read the words aloud, feeling them resonate in her chest. Decision crystallized. She had to go back to Storm. Now. The house was quiet as she slipped out, the night air, cool against her skin. Silver Creek slept under a canopy of stars, the kind of stars never visible in Boston. Lily moved through shadows, guided by instinct and the pull of something she couldn't name. Horizon Ranch was dark except for security lights illuminating the barn. Lily found the side door unlocked, country trusting or simple oversight, and slipped inside. The familiar smells of hay and horse surrounded her as she made her way to Storm's stall. The great stallion lay as before, his breathing, shallow eyes dull. But as Lily approached, his ears flickered toward her, registering her presence. "Hello, Storm," she whispered, her voice sounding strange in the quiet barn. She opened her mother's journal to the song she'd found, her fingers tracing the turquoise pendant at her throat. Taking a deep breath, she began to sing the Navajo words, her young voice clear and pure in the darkness. The effect was immediate and startling. Storm's head lifted, his eyes focusing on her with sudden intensity. He shifted, muscles rippling under his dull coat, and with effort rose to his feet. Lily continued singing the unfamiliar words, somehow flowing naturally from her tongue, as if she'd known them all her life. Storm moved to the stall door, lowering his great head to her level. Hesitantly, Lily reached through the bars, palm up in offering. Storm sniffed her hand, his breath warm against her skin. Then delicately he took a mouthful of hay from the pile she hadn't noticed beside the stall door. "That's it," she encouraged softly. "You need to eat to stay strong." Light suddenly flooded the barn. Lily turned startled to find Eleanor standing in the doorway, a flashlight in her hand. "I thought I heard something." Eleanor said, her tone more curious than angry. Her gaze moved from Lily to Storm, who was still eating with slow deliberation. "Well, I'll be damned." She approached carefully, watching as the stallion continued to eat, occasionally glancing at Lily, as if for reassurance. "How did you do that?" Eleanor asked, genuine wonder in her voice. Lily clutched her mother's journal. "I found this song in my mom's journal. It's Navajo. It says it's for talking to wild horses." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the journal. "May I see?" Lily hesitantly handed over the book open to the page with the song. Eleanor studied it, her expression growing increasingly complex. "Your mother wrote this." Lily nodded. "She gave me the journal before she died. This is the first time I've read it." Eleanor returned the journal with careful reverence. "The way you looked at Storm, the way he responded to you." She seemed to be working through something in her mind. "It reminds me of how your mother was with horses." "Did she come here to Horizon?" Lily asked suddenly, hungry for connections to her mother's past. "Yes," Eleanor said carefully. "Many years ago, before she left for college, before she met your father." A sound from the barn entrance drew their attention. A tall, elderly Native American man stood watching them, his long silver hair in a traditional braid, his weathered face impassive. "Joseph?" Eleanor acknowledged, not surprised by his appearance despite the late hour. "This is Lily Morgan, Elena's daughter." Joseph Wolfsong's dark eyes assessed Lily with quiet intensity. "I felt the presence of a soul rider awakening," he said simply. "Now I understand why." Lily looked between the adults' confusion and curiosity battling in her expression. "What's a soul rider?" she asked, echoing the term from her mother's journal. Joseph stepped closer, his movements deliberate and dignified. "One who can speak to the spirit of the Mustang?" He explained, his voice deep and melodious. "One who can see through their eyes, feel through their hearts. The gift is rare, passed through bloodlines, awakened only in those whose spirits are ready." He nodded toward Storm, who remained standing watching them with newfound alertness. "This stallion was dying of spirit sickness. Now he eats because you sang to his soul, not just his ears." Lily looked at Storm, remembering the flashes of memory and emotion she'd experienced when touching him. When I touched him earlier, I saw things. Like I was him running free, then being captured. And there was a golden horse, a mare who fell. He's looking for her." Joseph and Eleanor exchanged significant glances. "That would be his lead mare," Eleanor said. "Wild stallions often form special bonds with particular mares in their herd." "Willow," Lily said, the name coming to her lips without conscious thought. "Her name is Willow." Eleanor looked startled. "How do you know that name?" Lily frowned, confused herself. "I don't know. I just know." She touched her pendant. "Like I can hear him thinking it." Joseph nodded, unsurprised. "The connection grows stronger. The turquoise helps focus the gift as it has for generations." Thomas had never believed in the supernatural. As a veterinarian, he prided himself on scientific thinking, on diagnosis based on observable symptoms and proven treatments. But standing in the shadowed doorway of the barn, watching his silent, withdrawn daughter speaking animatedly to a wild Mustang, he felt the foundations of his rational world shift. He had followed Lily after discovering her empty bed, fear propelling him through the dark streets to Horizon Ranch. Now, listening to this conversation about soul riders and spiritual connections, he should have felt skepticism, even concern about these strangers influencing his impressionable daughter. Instead, he felt a strange sense of recognition. Elena had tried to tell him about her heritage, her beliefs. He had listened with academic interest, respecting her culture, without truly understanding it. Now, watching Lily light up with purpose for the first time since Elena's death, he wondered how much he had missed. "Lily," he said softly, stepping into the light. She turned, surprise and a hint of guilt crossing her face. "Dad, I had to come. Storm needed me." He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not just the grieving child who had retreated into silence for 8 months, but a glimpse of the strength and connection to something larger that had always drawn him to Elena. "I see that," he said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "Next time, wake me up first." Relief washed over Lily's features. She turned back to Storm, who had continued eating his eyes, never leaving her. "He's going to be okay now," she said with quiet certainty. Thomas wasn't sure if she was right, but for the first time in months, he felt a fragile hope taking root. Not just for the stallion, but for his daughter. For them both. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the desert in golden amber, Storm stood at his stall door watching Lily with intelligent eyes that now held a spark of life. The great stallion had found something worth living for a connection of purpose. In the most unexpected way, through the most unexpected person, he had found a reason to fight. And so had Lily. The days that followed marked a transformation in Lily. Each afternoon after school, she would rush to Horizon Ranch, where Storm awaited her with growing vitality. Thomas adjusted his clinic schedule to accommodate these visits, watching with a mixture of wonder and caution as his daughter emerged from her shell of grief. "His coat is already looking better," Eleanor observed 1 week after Lily's midnight visit, running an experienced hand along Storm's flank. The stallion's once dull black coat had begun to regain its luster muscles, rebuilding beneath it. "He's eating regularly now," Jake confirmed, leaning on a pitchfork. "Still won't take food from anyone but Miss Lily, though." Lily stood beside Storm in the small paddock where he was now allowed supervised time outside his stall. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder, a point of connection she maintained whenever possible. Each touch brought flashes of Storm's memories, running with his herd, drinking from clear streams, standing guard, while others slept beneath star-filled skies. And always images of Willow, her golden coat gleaming in sunlight, her gentle strength, her steadfast presence at his side. "He still misses her," Lily said quietly. "Willow. He keeps looking for her." Joseph Wolfsong, who had become a regular presence at these sessions, nodded thoughtfully. The bond between Led Stallion and his chosen mare runs deep. Their spirits are connected even when separated. Thomas, observing from the fence, felt the familiar discomfort these conversations brought. Joseph spoke of spirit connections and ancient knowledge with the same certainty Thomas reserved for medical diagnoses and treatment protocols. Yet he couldn't deny the results. Storm, deemed hopeless a week ago, now stood strong, responding to Lily in ways that defied conventional explanation. His daughter, silent and withdrawn for months now, spoke with animation, her eyes bright with purpose. "Dad, can I try riding him?" Lily asked suddenly. Thomas straightened, alarm flashing across his features. "Absolutely not. He's a wild Mustang, Lily. Barely halter broken, let alone saddle trained." "I wouldn't need a saddle," Lily persisted. "He'd let me. I know he would." "Out of the question," Thomas said firmly. "I'm glad you're helping him recover, but there are limits to what I can allow." Disappointment clouded Lily's face, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned back to Storm, whispering something in his ear. The stallion nickered softly in response, as if understanding. Eleanor approached Thomas, lowering her voice. "She has her mother's gift, Thomas, and her stubborn streak." What exactly was Elena's connection to this place? Thomas asked the question that had been building for days, finally emerging. She never spoke much about Silver Creek or her life here before college. Eleanor's weathered face grew contemplative. "It's not my story to tell, not entirely. But Elena was special like Lily. She understood the Mustangs in ways most people couldn't." She glanced toward Joseph, who stood watching Lily and Storm with quiet approval. "Joseph knows more. He was her mentor in the old ways." Before Thomas could press further, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. Cameron Hayes's black SUV rolled up the gravel drive, dust billowing in its wake. Eleanor's expression hardened. "Right on schedule. He shows up every few days with a new offer, each one final until the next." Hayes emerged from the vehicle alone, his casual business attire impeccable, despite the desert heat. He took in the scene with a quick assessing glance, Lily and Storm in the paddock, Joseph by the fence, Thomas and Eleanor watching warily. "Making progress with our troubled stallion, I see," Hayes commented, approaching. "Good afternoon, Eleanor, Dr. Morgan." He nodded to Joseph with measured respect. "Mr. Wolfsong." "What brings you by this time, Cameron?" Eleanor asked without preamble. Hayes gestured toward the main house. "I've brought some information about the water rights hearing I thought you should see. Perhaps we could discuss it privately. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. Thomas, would you mind staying with Lily? I won't be long. As Eleanor and Hayes walked toward the house, Thomas moved closer to the paddock, watching his daughter with the massive stallion. She was showing Storm a sketch from her notebook, as if the horse could appreciate her artwork. Remarkably, Storm stood attentively, ears forward, completely engaged. She has the gift, Joseph said quietly, joining Thomas at the fence. Stronger even than her mother's, perhaps. Thomas turned to the elder, curiosity overcoming his reservations. You knew Elena well. Joseph's dark eyes held ancient wisdom. I taught her to understand her gift, to use it responsibly. Elena was born to be a soul rider, but she chose a different path. What exactly is a soul rider? Thomas asked, the term still foreign and mystical to his scientific mind. In the old days, certain children of the Diné the Navajo were born with the ability to connect with Mustangs on a spiritual level. They could see through the horse's eyes, access their memories, communicate without words. Joseph gestured toward Lily. When a soul rider touches a Mustang, the connection opens both ways. The horse recognizes the human as kin spirit, not predator. Thomas watched Lily lean her forehead against Storm's neck, her eyes closed in concentration. And you believe Lily has inherited this ability? It is not a matter of belief, Dr. Morgan. You have seen it yourself. Joseph's voice held no judgment, only certainty. The turquoise pendant she wears, it belongs to the soul riders. It helps focus the gift, protect the bearer from being overwhelmed by the connection. Thomas's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, where a matching pendant hung beneath his shirt. Elena's final gift to him, pressed into his palm during their last moments together. Elena never spoke of this, he said softly. She left Silver Creek to escape it, Joseph replied. Not the gift itself, but the responsibility that came with it. And the conflict. Thomas frowned. What conflict? Joseph's gaze shifted toward the house, where Eleanor and Hayes were now visible through the window, clearly engaged in intense discussion. 20 years ago, Richard Hayes Cameron's father proposed a dam on Moonlight Creek to supply water for a mining operation. The dam would have destroyed the migration routes and water access for the wild herds. Elena led the Mustangs to a hidden valley, a sacred place, known only to a few Navajo elders. Thomas tried to reconcile this image with the Elena he had known, passionate about her heritage certainly, but also rational, science-minded in her approach to traditional medicine. What happened? There was a confrontation. Richard Hayes had powerful allies. Elena stood against them, using her connection with the Mustangs to keep them safe. Joseph paused. It ended badly. Elena left Silver Creek, vowing never to return. And now her daughter is here with the same gift. Thomas murmured, pieces falling into place. The land remembers, Joseph said simply, and so do the horses. Inside the ranch house, Eleanor faced Hayes across the kitchen table, the folder he'd brought open between them. These projections can't be accurate, she said, tapping a graph showing diminished water flow to the eastern section of Horizon if the Sun Valley water diversion was approved. This would reduce Moonlight Creek to a trickle during summer months. My operation couldn't survive. Hayes leaned back, his expression neutral but determined. The science is sound, Eleanor. The resort needs a reliable water source. The golf course alone. A golf course, Eleanor interrupted flatly. In the desert, while wild horses die of thirst. Progress requires difficult choices, Hayes countered. Silver Creek is dying economically. The mine's been closed for 5 years. Young people leave for better opportunities. The resort would create 300 permanent jobs, increase property values, bring tourism revenue. Eleanor studied him, seeing beyond the businessman to something deeper. This isn't just about economic development for you, is it, Cameron? This is personal. A shadow crossed Hayes' face. My father tried to bring prosperity to Silver Creek 20 years ago. He was blocked by environmental activists and Navajo traditionalists who valued wild horses over human progress. I remember, Eleanor said quietly. I was one of those activists. Hayes' jaw tightened. My father died believing he'd failed this town. I intend to finish what he started the right way, with sustainable development and community benefits. At the expense of the wild herds and Horizon Ranch. Change is inevitable, Eleanor. You can be part of it, benefit from it, or be left behind. Hayes closed the folder. My offer for Horizon stands. well above market value, plus a position for you overseeing the equestrian program if you want it. And if I refuse, then I'll win the water rights hearing anyway, and you'll be left with a ranch you can't maintain and horses you can't properly care for." His tone softened slightly. "I don't want to be the villain here. I genuinely believe this development is best for everyone, including the horses. Modern facilities, proper veterinary care, controlled breeding programs. In paddocks and stables, not free on the range where they belong." Eleanor finished. Hayes stood straightening his jacket. "The council votes in 3 weeks. Think about it, Eleanor. For your sake and for Victor's." In the small paddock, Lily had moved deeper into her connection with Storm. Each day the bond strengthened, allowing her to see more of his memories, feel more of his emotions. She kept her eyes closed, forehead pressed to his warm neck, breathing in his scent of dust and sage. Today something new emerged, not just memories, but awareness of her own thoughts within the connection. Storm was learning to communicate back. Willow. Find Willow. The thought came with such clarity that Lily gasped, opening her eyes and stepping back. Storm regarded her with intelligent expectation. "I don't know where she is," Lily whispered. "I don't know if she's even alive." Storm pawed the ground once decisively. In her mind, Lily saw flashes of the golden mare being loaded into a separate trailer, injured, but conscious. Then nothing, the connection broken by distance and trauma. "Lily," Thomas called, concerned by her sudden movement. "Everything all right?" She turned to her father, excitement and uncertainty battling in her expression. "Dad, I think Storm is asking me to help find Willow. His mare. He thinks she's still alive." Thomas exchanged glances with Joseph, who nodded slightly as if confirming something. "The BLM records should show where all the horses from that roundup were sent," Thomas said carefully, not committing, but not dismissing her either. "Could we check?" Lily asked, hope brightening her features. Before Thomas could answer, raised voices from the ranch house caught their attention. Eleanor and Hayes had moved to the porch, their discussion escalating into argument. "This isn't just about water rights," Eleanor's voice carried clearly. "It's about an entire ecosystem, a way of life. A way of life for a few dozen wild horses and one struggling ranch," Hayes countered, "weighed against the future of an entire community." The back door of the house opened, and Victor wheeled himself onto the porch, inserting himself into the confrontation. "Mother, you need to listen to reason," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "Hayes is right. The ranch is barely breaking even. The buildings need repairs we can't afford. And your health—" "My health is fine," Eleanor snapped. "The doctor said—" "I know what Dr. Simmons said." Eleanor cut him off sharply, then noticed their audience by the paddock. Her expression closed shutters coming down over vulnerability. Hayes followed her gaze, composing himself quickly. "We'll continue this discussion another time." He nodded to the group by the paddock before walking to his SUV. Victor remained on the porch, his expression a complex mixture of concern and resentment, as he watched his mother descend the steps and walk toward the barn, her back straight despite the weight of years and worry. That evening, Thomas found Lily in her room, surrounded by pages from Elena's journal. Sketches of horses, Navajo symbols, pressed flowers, and handwritten notes covered her bed in organized chaos. "What are you looking for?" he asked, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed to avoid disturbing her arrangement. "Clues," Lily replied, intent on a page of Navajo text. "Mom wrote about special places where the Mustangs would go during droughts or when they were threatened. Sacred places." She looked up at him, eyes bright with purpose. "I think that's where we need to look for Willow, or at least for information about where she might have been taken." Thomas studied his daughter, the animation in her face, the determination in her posture. He barely recognized the silent, withdrawn child of the past 8 months. "Lily," he began gently, "I'm glad you're connecting with your mother's heritage, and I'm amazed at what you've done with Storm, but we need to be realistic about finding this mare. The BLM processes thousands of Mustangs. She could be anywhere adopted in long-term holding or—" He didn't finish the thought, but Lily understood. "She's alive," Lily insisted. "Storm knows it. I can feel it through him." Thomas sighed, caught between encouraging this new vitality in his daughter and protecting her from potential disappointment. I'll make some inquiries with the BLM office, see if we can track the horses from Storm's roundup. That's the practical first step. Lily considered this, then nodded. Okay, but I'm going to keep looking in Mom's journal too. Deal. Thomas hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling him. Lily, when you connect with Storm, what does it feel like? She thought for a moment, trying to find words for the experience. It's like suddenly being bigger, seeing through different eyes, feeling things that aren't mine, but somehow are. It's scary at first, but then it feels right. She looked at him directly. Mom could do it too, couldn't she? That's why Eleanor and Joseph weren't surprised. Thomas nodded slowly. It seems your mother had abilities she never fully explained to me. Perhaps she wanted to protect you from the burden until you were older. It's not a burden, Lily said with unexpected conviction. It's a gift. Mom called it that in her journal. She said the gift chooses when to awaken, usually after a great loss or change. Like losing your mother, Thomas thought but didn't say. Instead, he reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, a gesture Elena used to make. Get some sleep, he said softly. Storm will be waiting for you tomorrow. The BLM office in Cedar Ridge was a utilitarian government building with fluorescent lighting and the distinct atmosphere of bureaucracy. Thomas had arranged a meeting with Regional Director Rebecca Whitehorse, hoping her Navajo background might make her sympathetic to their inquiry. Dr. Morgan, she greeted him professionally, shaking his hand before acknowledging Lily with a gentle smile. And this must be Lily. Eleanor mentioned you've had remarkable success with the stallion from the Silver Mesa Roundup. Storm, Lily corrected automatically. Rebecca's smile deepened. Yes, Storm. Unusual name for a BLM Mustang. They're typically given numbers until formally adopted. He told me his name, Lily said with the straightforward honesty of youth. Rebecca's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't comment on this claim. Instead, she gestured for them to sit and opened a file on her desk. You're interested in tracking the other horses from that particular gather? She said, all business now. We brought in 12 Mustangs, total 1 stallion, 8 mares, 3 foals. What happened to them? Thomas asked. Rebecca consulted her records. The stallion went to Horizon Ranch, as you know. The foals and 4 mares were sent to the adoption program in Carson City. 2 mares were deemed too old for adoption and went to long-term holding in Wyoming. She hesitated, something in her expression shifting. 2 mares were euthanized due to injuries sustained during transport. Lily's breath caught. Was one of them golden-colored with a white blaze on her face? Rebecca checked her notes. Yes, that matches the description of one mare designated Notch 7301. How did you know? Lily looked at her father, distress evident in her features. Thomas placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. We had reason to believe this particular mare had a special bond with Storm, he explained professionally. It would help his rehabilitation to know what happened to her. Rebecca studied them thoughtfully. According to the report, Mare Norm 7301 suffered a broken leg during transport. Standard protocol requires euthanasia in such cases. Lily's eyes filled with tears. No, she whispered. That's not right. She's alive. Storm knows she's alive. Rebecca's professional demeanor softened slightly. I understand this is upsetting, but the documentation is clear. The mare was humanely euthanized 3 weeks ago. Thomas thanked Rebecca for her time guiding a shaken Lily from the office. In the car, she sat silently, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Lily, Thomas said gently. I know you wanted to help Storm. The records are wrong, Lily insisted, wiping her tears with determination. Storm would know if she were dead. The connection would be broken. But it's not, it's just muffled, like she's far away or hidden. Thomas started the engine, uncertain how to respond. Science and logic told him to prepare his daughter for the reality of loss. But the events of the past weeks had shaken his certainty, opened him to possibilities beyond his rational understanding. What does Joseph say about soul riders feeling when their connected horses die? He asked finally. Lily looked at him with surprise, not expecting this approach. He said the connection doesn't just disappear, it transforms. But you feel it happen like a door closing, but a window opening. She pressed her hand to her heart. Storm doesn't feel that. He feels searching, waiting. Thomas considered this. Then let's not give up entirely, but we need to be prepared that the official record might be correct. Lily nodded, determination replacing despair. We need to talk to Joseph. He might know something the BLM doesn't. Joseph Wolfsong's home sat on the edge of the Navajo reservation, a modest house surrounded by gardens of traditional medicinal plants. Wind chimes made of bone and shell created delicate music in the desert breeze. He welcomed them to his shaded porch, serving cold tea in handmade pottery cups. Lily immediately shared what they'd learned at the BLM office. Joseph listened without interruption, his weathered face impassive. When she finished, he sat in thoughtful silence before speaking. The government records say what the government wishes to record, he said finally. Not always what is true. Hope flickered in Lily's eyes. You think Willow might be alive? I think, Joseph said carefully, that your connection with Storm has meaning. If he believes his mare lives, there may be truth in it. He studied Lily with penetrating eyes. But finding her will require deepening your gift, moving beyond surface memories to true communion. How do I do that? Through ceremony, through the ancient way of the soul riders. Joseph turned to Thomas. With your permission, Dr. Morgan. Thomas hesitated, protective instincts warring with his desire to support Lily's journey. What would this ceremony involve? Prayer, meditation, sacred herbs to help Lily focus her spirit. Nothing harmful. Joseph's eyes held Thomas's steadily. Elena participated in such ceremonies many times. The mention of Elena shifted something in Thomas. Throughout their marriage, he had respected her heritage without fully embracing it. Now he wondered if that distance had created a gap he hadn't recognized until too late. If Lily wants to try, I won't object, he said finally. Lily's face brightened. When can we do it? Tonight, Joseph replied. When the veil between worlds is thinnest, bring Storm to the circle behind Horizon's barn, and bring your mother's journal. The evening air carried the scent of sage and juniper as Joseph prepared the ceremonial space. A small fire burned in a stone ring pit, its flames casting dancing shadows. Around it, Joseph had created a circle of stones, feathers, and bundles of herbs placed in specific patterns. Eleanor provided a shallow clay bowl of water, placing it carefully where Joseph indicated. Thomas stood nearby, medical bag at his feet, a habit of preparation he couldn't abandon, despite the non-medical nature of the gathering. Lily led Storm into the circle, the stallion, surprisingly calm, despite the fire and unfamiliar setup. She had spent the afternoon reading specific passages from Elena's journal, preparing herself mentally as Joseph had instructed. The ceremony of connection is ancient. Joseph explained, his voice taking on a formal cadence, used by our ancestors to communicate with the Mustang spirits during times of need. Tonight we seek to strengthen the bond between soul rider and chosen horse, to see beyond physical eyes. He turned to Lily. Are you ready, daughter of Elena? Lily nodded, her expression solemn but determined. She wore the turquoise pendant outside her shirt, now the stone gleaming in the firelight. Joseph began to sing in Navajo, his deep voice rising and falling in patterns that seemed to resonate with the crackling fire and whispering wind. He scattered herbs onto the flames, releasing aromatic smoke that swirled around the circle. Following his instructions, Lily stood beside Storm, one hand resting on his neck, the other holding the pendant. She closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing as Joseph had taught her. The chanting continued, Joseph moving around the circle with measured steps. He dipped an eagle feather into the clay bowl, using it to sprinkle water in the 4 cardinal directions, before touching it gently to Lily's forehead and then to Storm's. Thomas watched, torn between scientific skepticism and undeniable fascination. Eleanor stood beside him, her expression reverent, but not surprised, as if she had witnessed such ceremonies before. Eleanor stood just as Lily does now, she whispered to Thomas. 20 years ago, when she first discovered her gift. Within the circle, Lily felt the world around her receding. Joseph's voice became distant, the fire's warmth less immediate. What grew stronger was Storm, his heartbeat, his breathing, his essence. The connection that had been opening in flashes and fragments now expanded fully. She was running across open plains, wine in her mane, the herd behind her. She was drinking from clear streams, standing guard under star-filled skies. She was Storm, but not losing herself in the process, rather expanding to hold both consciousnesses at once. And there was Willow Golden Coat gleaming in memory, steady presence, quiet strength. The images shifted, becoming more recent. The roundup, the separation, the trailer. Pain in Willow's leg, fear in her eyes as the doors closed between them. Then something unexpected, hands lifting Willow, not roughly but with care. An elderly Navajo woman, speaking softly. A journey in darkness. The scent of healing herbs, the sensation of confinement, but not cruelty. Pain managed but not gone. Willow was alive. The realization hit Lily with such force that she gasped, her eyes flying open. She's alive! Storm was right. Joseph's chanting ceased. What did you see, Lily? Willow is being cared for by someone, a Navajo woman, in a place with high walls like a canyon or valley. Lily's words tumbled out, excitement overriding coherence. There are petroglyphs on the rocks, ancient drawings of horses and people. Storm has been there before. Joseph and Eleanor exchanged significant glances. The hidden valley, Eleanor said softly, where Elena led the herds 20 years ago. Joseph nodded. Rebecca Skywalker still lives there, keeping the old ways. If an injured mare needed sanctuary, that is where our people would take her. Can we go there now? Lily asked, still half immersed in Storm's urgency. It's not an easy journey, Joseph cautioned, and not one to begin at night. Tomorrow I will guide you. Thomas stepped forward. Wait, if this place is so hidden, how can you be sure Willow is there? This could have been just a vision, not reality. Dad, Lily protested. I saw it. Storm's memories connected with Willow's somehow. She's there. Joseph regarded Thomas with patience. The Soul Rider's gift shows truth, Dr. Morgan, even when that truth is distant. But your caution is wise. We will verify with Rebecca before raising Storm's hopes too high. Thomas nodded, compromise reached. Tomorrow then. As they led Storm back to his stall, the stallion's energy had visibly changed, alertness, replacing lethargy, purpose, replacing despair. He knew something had shifted, that the search for his lost mate had begun in earnest. None of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows of the barn. Maya Hayes, her expression a complex mixture of curiosity and concern. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the desert landscape painted in gold and amber. Thomas arrived at Horizon early, finding Eleanor on the porch with coffee and concern. There's been a development, she said without preamble. Maya Hayes was here last night watching the ceremony. Thomas felt a chill despite the morning warmth. Has she told her father? Unclear, but Cameron called this morning wanting to meet about the water rights. He sounded different, more urgent. Before Thomas could respond, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. Instead of Hayes' sleek SUV, a BLM truck pulled into the drive. Rebecca Whitehorse stepped out, her professional demeanor replaced by obvious tension. Eleanor, she called, striding toward the porch. We need to talk. There's been a complaint filed about Horizon's facilities and practices. Eleanor straightened, coffee forgotten. What complaint? Allegations of unsanctioned religious ceremonies involving BLM Mustangs, inadequate security measures, unauthorized personnel handling federal property. Rebecca's tone made clear she was reciting rather than endorsing these charges. Hayes, Eleanor said flatly. Rebecca didn't confirm or deny. There will be an inspection today. I wanted to warn you. Who filed the complaint? Thomas asked. Rebecca hesitated. Officially, it's anonymous. Unofficially, she lowered her voice. Victor Reynolds co-signed with an unnamed party. Eleanor's face drained of color. Victor, my son. The betrayal hung in the air, stunning in its implications. Before anyone could process it fully, Joseph's truck appeared with Lily in the passenger seat, excitement evident even at a distance. They're here for the journey to Hidden Valley, Eleanor realized aloud, with BLM inspectors on the way and Hayes likely involved. We need to delay them, Thomas decided quickly, until we sort this out. But as Joseph parked and Lily bounded out, her face alight with purpose, Thomas knew it wouldn't be easy. His daughter had found her voice, her passion, her connection to her mother's heritage. Asking her to wait when Storm's mate might be within reach would be like asking the wind not to blow. The morning's golden promise had suddenly darkened with complications, allegations, and the specter of betrayal. Whatever happened next would shape not just Storm's fate, but the future of Horizon Ranch, the wild herds, and perhaps Silver Creek itself. And at the center of it all stood Lily, no longer silent, no longer withdrawn, but blazing with the awakened gift of the Soul Riders and all the responsibility that came with it. Wow, what do you mean we can't go? Lily's voice cracked with disappointment as Thomas explained the situation. Storm has waited too long already. They stood in the barn, the stallion alert in his stall, sensing the tension. Rebecca Whitehorse and Eleanor spoke in hushed tones near the entrance while Joseph waited patiently by his truck. It's complicated, Lily, Thomas said, trying to project calm he didn't feel. The BLM inspection could determine whether Horizon keeps its license to rehabilitate Mustangs. We need to focus on that first. But Willow, we'll still be there tomorrow, Thomas finished firmly. If she's survived this long, one more day won't change things. Lily's eyes flashed with a determination that reminded Thomas painfully of Elena. You don't understand the connection. Storm feels her pain, her loneliness. Every day matters. Before Thomas could respond, Eleanor approached her, expression grave, but composed. Rebecca says the inspectors will be here within the hour. We need to prepare. She looked at Lily with genuine regret. I'm sorry, child. The journey to Hidden Valley must wait. Lily looked between the adults, frustration evident. Then her gaze fell on Joseph, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. The government has always found ways to interfere with our connection to the Mustangs, Joseph said quietly. This is not new. Is there another way? Lily asked him directly. To help Storm without going to the valley today? Joseph considered her question with the deliberation of an elder. The ceremony last night opened the connection wider. You might try focusing on sending strength to Willow, letting her know help is coming. Like talking to her through Storm. More like allowing Storm to reach across the distance, Joseph clarified. The bond between stallion and lead mare transcends physical separation. Thomas wanted to object to this mystical approach but held his tongue. Whether or not he believed in spirit riders and magical connections, Lily's bond with Storm was undeniably real and therapeutic for both of them. All right, Lily conceded reluctantly, but tomorrow we go no matter what. The sound of vehicles approaching ended further discussion. Through the barn door, they could see two official BLM trucks, and behind them, Cameron Hayes's black SUV. Hayes, Eleanor said flatly. Of course he'd come to witness this. Thomas placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. Let's handle this calmly and professionally. These inspectors are just doing their job. As they stepped outside, 4 BLM officials in uniform approached, clipboards and cameras ready. Hayes remained by his vehicle, Maya surprisingly at his side. The teenager's expression was unreadable, but she didn't avoid Lily's questioning gaze. Mrs. Reynolds, the lead inspector began formally. I'm Agent Davis. We're here to conduct an unscheduled inspection following concerns about facility standards and practices. My ranch has passed every inspection for 20 years. Eleanor replied, her dignity unwavering, despite the clear intimidation tactic. Nothing has changed. Procedures evolve, ma'am. If you'll show us around. For the next hour, the inspectors examined every aspect of Horizon stall dimensions. Water quality, feed storage, medical records, security measures. They photographed, measured, and documented with meticulous attention to detail. Thomas stayed close to Lily, who had retreated to Storm's stall, her hand resting on the stallion's neck in silent communication. Joseph remained nearby, occasionally murmuring guidance in Navajo. Hayes eventually approached them, maintaining a respectful distance from Storm's stall. Dr. Morgan, he acknowledged with professional courtesy, I hope you understand this inspection isn't personal. Proper oversight benefits everyone, including the Mustangs. Interesting timing, Thomas replied neutrally, right when Eleanor refused your latest offer. The complaint wasn't mine, Hayes said, though his eyes shifted slightly. The BLM received information from multiple sources, including Victor Reynolds. Thomas stated rather than asked. Hayes didn't deny it. Victor is concerned about his mother's health and the ranch's future. He believes she's overextending herself. Lily looked up at the mention of Eleanor's health. What's wrong with Eleanor? Hayes seemed to realize he'd said too much. That's not my place to discuss. Maya, who had been lingering nearby, stepped closer. Dad, she said quietly, this isn't right. Hayes turned to his daughter, surprise evident. Maya rarely spoke in public and never to contradict him. We should go, he told her firmly. No, Maya's voice strengthened. I need to tell them what I saw. Something passed between father and daughter, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Hayes nodded, once his jaw tight. Maya approached Lily, ignoring the adults. Last night after I left, I told my father about the ceremony, but I didn't tell him everything. She glanced at Storm, then back to Lily. I've seen you with him. The way you connect, it's real. Lily studied Maya warily. Why were you watching us? Because Maya hesitated, vulnerability breaking through her usual reserve. My grandmother was Navajo, my mom's mom. She used to tell me stories about people who could talk to horses with their hearts. I thought they were just legends until I saw you with Storm. This revelation clearly surprised Hayes as much as everyone else. He stared at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. Maya, we've never discussed your grandmother's stories, he said, confusion evident. Because you never wanted to talk about Mom's family after she left. Maya replied with the directness of long-held truth. But Grandma Rosa visited me at boarding school before she died. She told me about our heritage, about the Soul Riders. She said our family once had the gift too. The inspection team approached the barn, interrupting this unexpected confession. We've completed our initial assessment, Agent Davis announced. There are several areas of concern we need to discuss with Mrs. Reynolds. Eleanor stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. My office would be appropriate for that discussion. As they moved toward the house, Thomas noticed Victor's wheelchair on the porch. He had been watching the entire inspection without making his presence known until now. I don't understand, Lily whispered to Maya when the adults had moved away. If you believe in the Soul Riders, why help your father shut down Horizon? I didn't know that's what would happen, Maya insisted. I just told him what I saw because... She struggled for words. Because it was the first time in years I felt connected to my mom's side. To something real. The genuine emotion in Maya's voice convinced Lily. Storm believes Willow is alive, in a place called Hidden Valley. We need to find her. Maya's eyes widened. The mare from the roundup, the BLM records said she was euthanized. The records are wrong, Lily stated with absolute certainty. Storm knows she's alive. I've seen her through his memories. Maya hesitated, then reached a decision. I can help. My father has the BLM transport records in his office, the real ones, not the public versions. I could look for information about where Willow might have been taken. Why would you help us? Lily asked, suspicious, despite her desire to believe. Because, Maya said simply, my grandmother would have wanted me to. Their conversation was interrupted by raised voices from the house. Eleanor and Hayes were arguing on the porch, Victor positioned between them and his wheelchair. 3 violations. Eleanor's voice carried clearly. After 20 years of perfect inspections, this is harassment, and we all know it. The regulations exist for a reason, Hayes countered. The BLM has a responsibility to ensure proper care of federal property. They're living beings, not property, Eleanor shot back. Victor wheeled forward. Mother, be reasonable. The violations can be fixed with proper funding Hayes is offering, if you just sell. So that's what this is about. Eleanor turned to her son, betrayal etched in every line of her weathered face. You helped orchestrate this inspection to force my hand. Victor didn't deny it. I'm trying to secure our future. Your health isn't improving, and you refuse to acknowledge it. This ranch is too much for you now. My health is my concern, Eleanor snapped, and this ranch is my life's work. It was Dad's dream, not yours, Victor countered bitterly. You've spent 20 years holding on to it out of loyalty to a ghost while neglecting the living. The raw pain in his words silenced everyone on the porch. Eleanor stared at her son, shock replacing anger. Is that what you think? She asked finally, her voice barely audible. That I chose the ranch over you? Victor looked away, the answer in his silence. Inside the barn, Joseph approached Lily and Maya, his expression grave. The conflict grows. Soon the BLM will issue their report, and Storm's future here may be in jeopardy. What can we do? Lily asked, fear gripping her heart. Joseph's eyes held ancient wisdom. Sometimes the direct path is blocked for a reason. We must find another way. He glanced at Maya thoughtfully. Perhaps one already presents itself. Before he could elaborate, a commotion erupted outside. One of the BLM trucks had backed up to the paddock area, and officials were unloading equipment, transport crates, and restraint gear. What's happening? Thomas demanded, striding from the barn. Agent Davis met him with bureaucratic detachment. Given the violations and ongoing concerns, we're removing the federal Mustang for assessment at our holding facility until Horizon addresses the issues. You're taking Storm, Lily cried, rushing forward. You can't, Lily, Thomas cautioned, holding her back. Eleanor descended the porch steps, her dignity intact despite the obvious blow. This is premature and unnecessary. We have a right to address any concerns before removal. Policy states that when 3 or more critical violations are found, immediate relocation is standard procedure, Davis recited. The stallion will be transported to Cedar Ridge until remediation is complete. Hayes watched the scene unfold, conflict evident in his expression. This outcome, while advancing his agenda, seemed to be affecting him differently than anticipated. As the officials approached Storm's stall with halters and lead ropes, the stallion sensed the threat. He backed into the corner, ears, pinned eyes wild with remembered trauma from the roundup. He'll hurt himself or them if they try to force him, Eleanor warned. Please, Lily begged Thomas, don't let them take him. He's just starting to heal. Thomas faced an impossible situation. As a veterinarian, he understood the regulations, even agreed with their general purpose. But he also knew that separating Storm from Lily now could undo all the progress they'd made. I'll sedate him, he offered as compromise. Make the transport safer for everyone. Agent Davis considered this, then nodded. Acceptable if you have the proper medications on hand. In my truck, Thomas confirmed, squeezing Lily's shoulder reassuringly before walking to his vehicle. Joseph moved to Lily's side. Remember what we discussed about strengthening the connection? He murmured. Now is the time. Understanding dawned in Lily's eyes. She turned to Maya. Distract them. I need a moment with Storm before they take him. Maya hesitated only briefly before walking purposefully toward her father. Dad, I need to talk to you. Now. As attention shifted to the unexpected confrontation between Hayes and his daughter, Lily slipped into Storm's stall. The stallion was agitated but calm slightly at her familiar presence. Storm, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his neck. Listen carefully. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection as Joseph had taught her. Not just receiving impressions this time, but deliberately sending thoughts, images, feelings. Tonight. Freedom. Follow the stars. Find me. She concentrated on projecting these concepts along with images of Moonlight Creek, the path to Hidden Valley, the promised reunion with Willow. She felt Storm's consciousness shift from fear to focused attention, his intelligence engaging with her projected thoughts. Lily, Thomas called, returning with his medical bag. Step out now, please. She gave Storm one final intense look before exiting the stall. The stallion watched her go, no longer panicked, but alertly observant. Thomas administered the sedative with practiced efficiency, his movements gentle despite the clinical necessity. This will keep him calm during transport. It should wear off in 4 to 6 hours. Lily nodded, understanding the hidden message in her father's precise medical details. 6 hours would put sunset around the time Storm would regain full awareness. As the BLM officials led the sedated stallion into the transport trailer, Lily stood beside Eleanor, both trying to maintain composure in the face of defeat. Joseph remained a few paces behind them, his expression revealing nothing to casual observers, but communicating silent support to those who understood his ways. This isn't over, Eleanor said quietly as the trailer doors closed. Not by a long shot. Hayes approached Maya at his side. The teenager's expression suggested their private conversation had been significant. Eleanor, Hayes began, his tone different than before. I want you to know this removal wasn't my intention. The inspection, yes, but not this outcome. Your intention stopped mattering the moment you involved the BLM. Eleanor replied coldly. Hayes accepted this rebuke with unexpected grace. Perhaps, but I'm still willing to negotiate terms that would allow the sanctuary to continue under the Sun Valley umbrella. With you controlling the water rights, Eleanor noted. With shared access, Hayes corrected. Maya has convinced me to reconsider certain aspects of the development plan. Victor wheeled himself closer. Mother at least listened to the revised proposal. For my sake, if not your own. Eleanor studied her son, decades of complicated emotions passing between them. We'll talk, she conceded finally. But not today. Today I need to focus on getting Storm back where he belongs. As the BLM vehicles departed, Thomas pulled Lily aside. What did you do in the stall? He asked quietly. Gave Storm instructions, she replied. For tonight, Thomas raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned about these instructions? Lily met his gaze directly. Do you trust me, Dad? The question struck deep. Thomas thought of Elena, of the many times he'd respected her beliefs without fully understanding them. He thought of the changes he'd witnessed in Lily since connecting with Storm, the return of her spirit and voice. Yes, he said finally, I trust you. Night fell over Silver Creek stars, emerging in a velvet sky, untainted by city lights. Thomas drove carefully along the desert road, Lily beside him, Joseph in the back seat. They had left Eleanor dealing with the legal aftermath of the inspection, promising to call once they reached their destination. Are you sure about this? Thomas asked Lily for the third time since they'd departed. If Storm doesn't appear, he'll come, Lily stated with absolute certainty. I felt him understand. Thomas glanced at Joseph in the rearview mirror. And this hidden valley, you're sure we can find it in the dark? The stars are our guides as they have been for my people for centuries, Joseph replied. The valley reveals itself only to those who approach with the right intentions. Under normal circumstances, Thomas would have found such mystical talk frustrating. But these were not normal circumstances, and his scientific worldview had been repeatedly challenged since arriving in Silver Creek. They parked at the base of a mesa where Moonlight Creek emerged from the highlands. The night air carried the scent of sage and juniper, cool after the day's heat. Joseph led them along a barely visible trail that followed the creek's winding path. The government maps don't show this route, he explained. Our people have kept it hidden for generations. It leads to a place of sanctuary for both humans and Mustangs during times of need. The creek narrowed as they ascended the trail, becoming steeper. Lily moved with surprising sureness, despite the darkness, as if drawn forward by an invisible thread. Thomas followed more cautiously, medical bag over his shoulder, always prepared even on this most unorthodox of journeys. After an hour's hike, Joseph halted at what appeared to be a dead end, a sheer rock face blocking further progress along the creek. The uninvited would turn back here, he said, eyes glinting in the moonlight. But those who know the way. He moved confidently to the right where a narrow crevice was concealed by shadow and vegetation. Single file, they squeezed through the opening, emerging into a startling landscape. Before them stretched a hidden valley protected on all sides by towering rock formations. Moonlight illuminated a meadow fed by the creek, which widened into a small lake at the valley's center. Most remarkably, the valley wasn't empty. Several modest structures were visible near the far end, soft light glowing from their windows. And grazing peacefully in the moonlit meadow was a small herd of Mustangs, perhaps 15 in total. The sanctuary Elena helped establish 20 years ago, Joseph explained. Rebecca Skywalker maintains it now with help from a few families who choose to live according to the old ways, away from government interference. It's beautiful, Lily breathed, eyes wide with wonder. And Storm will find this place from the BLM facility. If your connection is as strong as I believe, yes, Joseph confirmed. Mustangs have an extraordinary sense of direction, and soul riders can guide them across great distances. Thomas remained skeptical but held his peace. They had come this far. They would see the night through. They approached the nearest dwelling, a small house built partially into the rock face. Before Joseph could announce their presence, the door opened. An elderly Navajo woman stood in the doorway, her silver hair in a traditional bun, her face deeply lined, but her dark eyes sharp and alert. Joseph Wolfsong, she greeted in a voice strong, despite her years. The stars spoke of your coming tonight. Rebecca Skywalker. Joseph responded with equal formality. We seek your wisdom and sanctuary. Rebecca's gaze moved to Lily, lingering on the turquoise pendant visible at her throat. Elena's daughter, she said, not a question, but a recognition. The new soul rider has awakened. Lily stepped forward. You knew my mother. She lived here for a time before choosing the outside world. Rebecca's expression softened with memory. Her gift was powerful, as I sense yours is becoming. We've come about a mare. Thomas interjected, his practical nature asserting itself. A golden Mustang with a white blaze injured during a BLM roundup 3 weeks ago. Rebecca studied him with the same penetrating gaze she had directed at Lily. Elena's husband, the healer of animals. She nodded once decisively. Come, all of you. She led them along a path toward a structure separate from the others, a stone barn built against the valley wall. Inside, lanterns cast warm light over several stalls. Rebecca walked directly to the last one, gesturing for them to look. Lying on a bed of clean straw was a golden mare. Her coat dull with illness, but her white-blazed face unmistakable from Lily's descriptions. One of her hind legs was splinted, and various Navajo healing items, feathers, crystals, bundles of herbs surrounded her stall. Willow! Lily whispered, tears filling her eyes. The mare's head lifted at the sound, ears pricking forward with interest. How did she come here? Thomas asked, already moving closer to assess her condition with professional eyes. BLM agents are not all heartless bureaucrats, Rebecca replied. Some remember the old ways, respect the ancient bonds. When this mare was injured, one such agent contacted us rather than following protocol. The records listed her as euthanized, Thomas noted, kneeling to examine the splinted leg. Papers say what papers must, Rebecca said simply. The truth lives elsewhere. Lily approached the stall cautiously. May I? Rebecca nodded, opening the half door. Lily entered, slowly speaking soft words in Navajo phrases from her mother's journal. Willow watched her approach, neither fearful nor aggressive, an intelligence in her gaze that mirrored Storm's. When Lily touched the mare's neck, she gasped softly. The connection was immediate, not as strong as with Storm, but clear nonetheless. Images flowed the roundup from another perspective. The fall, the pain, gentle hands loading her into a vehicle different from the BLM trailers. The journey to this hidden place. She remembers everything, Lily said in wonder. And she knows Storm is alive, but not where. The bond between Led Stallion and his chosen mare transcends physical distance. Joseph repeated his earlier words. But injury and medicine have clouded her ability to reach him. Thomas had completed his examination, his expression troubled. The break was severe. It's healing, but not correctly. She'll never run properly again, even with the best veterinary care. Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. We have done what we could with traditional methods, but some injuries are beyond healing. Can Storm still find this place tonight? Lily asked anxiously. Will he know to come here? If your connection guided him, true, yes, Joseph assured her. But we must be patient. The journey is long, and he must avoid detection. They settled in to wait, Rebecca providing tea and bread. Thomas took the opportunity to speak with her about Willow's care, suggesting modifications to the splint and medications that might ease her pain. Though initially reserved, Rebecca proved receptive to this blending of traditional and modern approaches, much as Elena had been. As midnight approached, Lily grew increasingly anxious. He should have been here by now. What if the BLM caught him? What if he's lost? Trust the connection, Joseph counseled. Storm is strong and clever. If he escaped the facility, he will find his way. A sound from outside interrupted their vigil, not the expected hoofbeats, but the distinctive hum of an approaching vehicle. Everyone tensed. No one drives to the valley, Rebecca said, moving to the barn entrance. No proper road exists. Thomas joined her, peering into the darkness. Headlights were visible at the valley's far end, bouncing erratically as a vehicle navigated the rough terrain. Could the BLM have followed us? He asked Joseph quietly. Unlikely. The trail is known only to our people. As the vehicle drew nearer, they could identify it as an all-terrain Jeep. It stopped a respectful distance from the barn, and two figures emerged: Eleanor Reynolds and, surprisingly, Maya Hayes. Eleanor, Thomas called, stepping forward. How did you find this place? Maya knew the way, Eleanor replied, approaching quickly. Her grandmother showed her once years ago. Maya hung back, clearly uncertain of her welcome. I remembered enough landmarks to find the hidden entrance. I thought, I thought you might need help. Help with what? Lily asked, suspicion edging her voice. Storm, Maya said simply. The BLM facility reported his escape 2 hours ago. My father knows. He's organizing a search along the main roads. This news electrified the group. Then Storm is free, Lily breathed. He's coming. Not if Hayes's search teams find him first, Eleanor warned. They have vehicles, spotlights, tranquilizer guns. Joseph considered this new development. The Mustang will avoid roads and lights. He will follow the creek as we did. Then we should go back down the trail, Thomas suggested. Intercept him before he reaches any search parties. Rebecca raised a hand, silencing the discussion. Listen, she commanded. In the stillness that followed, they heard it, the distant thunder of hooves growing steadily closer. Not from the trail they had ascended, but from the western edge of the valley. Another entrance, Thomas asked, surprised. No entrance at all, Rebecca replied, a rare smile transforming her weathered features. Just sheer cliff faces that no horse could climb. Unless that horse carried the spirit of the wind itself. Joseph added his own expression, alight with wonder. They hurried outside, gazing toward the western ridge. Silhouetted against the star-filled sky stood a magnificent figure, Storm, his black coat silver in the moonlight, his stance proud and powerful atop what should have been an impassable slope. Storm! Lily cried, joy bursting from her heart. The stallion neighed in response, the sound echoing across the valley. Then with breathtaking sureness, he began to descend the steep incline, finding footholds where none seemed to exist. His movements a dance of strength and precision. The small herd grazing in the meadow had noticed the newcomer. They gathered, watching his approach with the natural wariness of wild creatures. Storm reached level ground and paused, assessing the herd, searching. From the barn, Willow let out a soft, nickering call. Storm's head whipped toward the sound, ears pricked forward in instant recognition. He moved toward the barn with purpose, his earlier caution forgotten. Let's give them space, Joseph suggested, guiding the group aside as Storm approached. The stallion slowed as he neared the barn, his powerful body trembling with emotion horses weren't supposed to possess. Lily opened the barn door wider, then the stall door, creating a clear path to Willow. The reunion transcended human understanding. Storm entered the stall with delicate care, lowering his muzzle to touch Willow's face. They breathed each other's scent, communicated in subtle movements, in soft sounds that needed no translation. The stallions settled beside the injured mare. Their bodies touching positions adjusted to accommodate Willow's splinted leg. Tears streamed down Lily's face as she watched them, the emotions flowing through her connection, overwhelming in their intensity. Joy, relief, concern, and something deeper, a bond that defied simple categorization. They found each other, she whispered. Across all that distance, despite everything. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders, his scientific skepticism finally surrendering to the evidence before him. Yes, they did. The moment of quiet celebration was broken by the sound of another vehicle approaching, this one, moving faster with less care for the terrain. Hayes, Eleanor guessed grimly. Maya, did you tell your father about this place? The teenager shook her head vehemently. Never. But he has resources, connections. If Storm was tracked heading this direction. Joseph and Rebecca exchanged concerned glances. The valley has remained hidden for generations, Joseph said. If Hayes finds it, now exposes it to the government. My father isn't the enemy you think he is, Maya insisted. He's complicated, driven by his own ghosts. But he's not cruel. The approaching vehicle stopped beside Eleanor's Jeep. A moment later, headlights cut through the darkness as a second larger vehicle arrived, a BLM transport truck. They've come for Storm, Lily realized, panic rising. We can't let them take him again. Not now. Thomas squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. Stay here with Joseph and Rebecca. Eleanor and I will handle this. He and Eleanor moved to intercept the new arrivals, positioning themselves between the vehicles and the barn. Hayes emerged from the Jeep accompanied by Agent Davis from the BLM. Behind them, to everyone's surprise, came Victor in his wheelchair, assisted by one of the BLM officers. Dr. Morgan, Hayes acknowledged, his tone carefully neutral. Mrs. Reynolds, I see you found our escaped Mustang. Cameron, Eleanor replied with equal restraint. This is private property, part of the reservation. You have no jurisdiction here. The Mustang is federal property, Agent Davis countered. We have every right to reclaim it. The situation is more complicated than that, Thomas interjected, falling back on his professional demeanor. The stallion has reunited with his injured mare. Separating them now would cause significant psychological trauma to both animals. Hayes studied Thomas thoughtfully. So Maya was right. The mare survived despite the official record. Dad, Maya called, emerging from the shadows. You need to see this before you make any decisions. After a moment's hesitation, Hayes followed his daughter toward the barn, Davis close behind. Victor signaled for his assistant to wheel him forward as well, his expression unreadable. Inside, the scene spoke for itself. Storm and Willow lay together in the straw, the stallion's powerful body curled protectively around the injured mare. Their connection was visible even to the most skeptical observer, a bond transcending instinct or habit. Lily stood beside the stall, her hand resting lightly on Storm's neck, eyes closed in silent communication. Joseph and Rebecca flanked her, their presence both protective and instructive. The soul rider awakens, Rebecca said softly, addressing Hayes directly. As one did 20 years ago when your father threatened this valley. Hayes stiffened. Elena Begay. My mother, Lily corrected, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. She protected the Mustangs then, as I will now. A complex series of emotions crossed Hayes's face. Old resentments, new uncertainties. My father always claimed a young Navajo woman used some kind of influence over the wild herds, led them away from the proposed dam site, made it impossible to proceed without causing a public relations nightmare. Elena understood the ancient connection between our people and the Mustangs, Joseph confirmed, as her daughter now does. Hayes looked at Storm and Willow, then at Lily, and finally at Maya. My mother, your grandmother, was Navajo, he said to his daughter. She left when I was young. My father forbade any mention of her heritage, her beliefs. But Grandma Rosa found me anyway, Maya replied softly. She wanted me to know our history, even if you rejected it. This revelation seemed to hit Hayes harder than anything that had come before. He turned to Eleanor, conflict evident in his bearing. The water rights hearing is still scheduled. The town needs the economic boost Sun Valley would provide. At the expense of this valley and the wild herds, Eleanor countered. Not necessarily, Victor spoke up unexpectedly. All eyes turned to him, surprise evident at his intervention. I've been reviewing the Sun Valley plans. There are alternatives that would allow shared water access without damming Moonlight Creek. Eleanor stared at her son Hope, warring with lingering hurt. You've been working on alternatives after pushing me to sell. I wanted security for your future, for our future, Victor admitted. But seeing this place, understanding what it means, he gestured around the barn, then at Storm and Willow. Dad would have fought to preserve this, not sell it off. Agent Davis cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the personal turn the conversation had taken. Regardless of local development plans, I have orders to reclaim federal property, specifically Mustang 7294. Look at them, Lily pleaded, indicating Storm and Willow. They belong together. Taking him now would be cruel. Sure. Regulations don't account for Mustang relationships, Davis replied, though his conviction seemed to waver as he observed the pair. Hayes stepped forward, decision crystallizing. What if I could offer an alternative A sanctuary zone as part of the Sun Valley development with protected status for Horizon Ranch and water rights guaranteed for both the ranch and this valley? You'd do that, Eleanor asked skeptically. With conditions, Hayes qualified. Horizon becomes a partner in Sun Valley's equestrian program. We develop sustainable tourism that educates visitors about wild horse conservation. And, he glanced at his daughter, we incorporate Navajo cultural heritage into the project, honoring the traditional connection with the land and the Mustangs. Victor wheeled closer to his mother. It's a genuine compromise, Mom. One that secures Horizon's future while respecting its mission. Eleanor studied Hayes intently, and the water rights hearing. I'll withdraw my exclusive application, propose a shared access model instead, Hayes promised. Agent Davis frowned. That still doesn't resolve the status of these specific Mustangs. BLM regulations are clear. Rebecca stepped forward, her presence commanding, despite her small stature. Perhaps a historical designation would help. She drew a small leather pouch from her pocket, extracting what appeared to be an old photograph. This valley has been a protected cultural site for generations. The government acknowledged this in a treaty signed in 1934. The photograph showed a much younger Rebecca, besides several government officials, signing documents against the backdrop of the valley's distinctive rock formations. This predates the BLM's authority over these lands, Rebecca continued. Any Mustangs within the valley boundaries fall under tribal jurisdiction, not federal. Davis examined the photograph with professional scrutiny. I'll need to verify this with our legal department. Of course, Rebecca agreed serenely. In the meantime, perhaps we could agree that both Mustangs remain here under Dr. Morgan's veterinary supervision until their status is resolved. Thomas recognized the diplomatic opening. I'd be happy to provide regular health assessments and documentation. Davis hesitated, then nodded grudgingly. Conditional approval pending legal review. The tension in the barn eased perceptibly. Lily returned her attention to Storm and Willow, whispering reassurances in a mixture of English and Navajo phrases from her mother's journal. They understand, she told the adults. They know they're safe now. As the night deepened toward dawn, the unlikely gathering dispersed. Davis returned to his vehicle official reports to file. Hayes and Maya prepared for the drive back to Silver Creek, a new understanding growing between father and daughter. Victor and Eleanor remained in quiet conversation, years of misunderstanding slowly giving way to reconciliation. Thomas found Lily still in the barn, seated on a hay bale beside the stall where Storm and Willow rested. The stallion's eyes were half closed in contentment, but he remained alert, protective of his injured mate. We should head back soon, Thomas said gently. It's been a long night. Lily nodded, but made no move to leave. They found each other across all that distance, against all odds. Yes, they did, Thomas agreed, sitting beside her. Like you found your voice again after months of silence. Lily leaned against her father, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Mom knew this would happen, didn't she? That's why she gave me her journal, her pendant. Thomas considered this. I think Elena hoped you would connect with your heritage someday. I don't think even she could have predicted Storm or this valley or any of what's happened. Hada Suntra. But she knew I had the gift, Lily persisted. The soul rider ability. Probably, Thomas conceded. She recognized something in you that she understood from her own experience. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this. I'm going to keep helping them, Dad. Not just Storm and Willow, but all the Mustangs. It's important. Thomas looked at his daughter, truly looked at her, and saw not just the grieving child who had retreated into silence after Elena's death, but a young woman finding her purpose, her voice, her connection to something larger than herself. I know, he said simply, and I'll help you. Outside the barn, the first light of dawn painted the hidden valley in gold and amber. Joseph and Rebecca stood watching the sunrise, ancient guardians of traditions that had endured despite everything modern society had thrown against them. The circle continues, Joseph observed quietly. Mother to daughter, stallion to mare, past to future. Rebecca nodded satisfaction in her weathered features. Elena would be pleased. Her daughter carries the gift with strength and wisdom. And Thomas, Joseph questioned, he is a man of science, not tradition. He loves his daughter, Rebecca replied, and he loved Elena. That is foundation enough for understanding to grow. In the stall, Storm shifted position, careful not to disturb Willow. His dark eyes watched the humans with intelligence and newfound trust. The connection Lily had established flowed strong and clear, a bridge between species, between worlds. The Mustang, who had been dying just weeks earlier, now stood as protector, his spirit rekindled by the unexpected bond with a grieving child who had found her own healing through helping him. Together they had defied separation, crossed physical distances, and discovered a new purpose neither could have found alone. As sunrise bathed the valley in light, Storm's coat gleamed with renewed vitality. Beside him, Willow rested peacefully, her golden coat catching the dawn's glow. Though her injury would never fully heal, she had found safety and reunion with her stallion, a different life than running wild across the desert, but one with its own meaning and value. The whispers of the dust cloud had carried truth across the barriers of language and species of skepticism and bureaucracy of old wounds and new beginnings. In their quiet communication, Mustang and Child had reminded the adults around them of connections too easily forgotten in the modern world to the land, to tradition, to family both born and chosen. And in that reminder lay the seeds of healing, not just for Storm and Lily, but for all whose lives they had touched. As sunset bathes the hidden valley in amber light, Storm and Willow rest side by side in the soft straw. Their bodies touch, one standing strong, one healing slowly, but their spirits dance together across invisible plains. Lily watches them, the turquoise pendant warm against her skin. 8 months of silence shattered by a connection she never knew she carried in her blood. We spend so much of our lives building walls between worlds, human and animal science, in spirit past and future. We forget that the most profound healing often comes not from medicine or time, but from being truly seen by another soul who understands our pain. Sometimes the most broken spirits recognize each other instantly. Sometimes an injured Mustang and a grieving child can lead each other back to life, teaching those around them to look beyond what can be measured or explained. Perhaps tonight, as you gaze at the stars, you might wonder, what ancient connections have we forgotten? What whispers might we hear if we learn to listen with more than our ears? The desert knows. The horses remember. And somewhere between dust and sky, between heartbeat and hoofbeat, the answer waits for those brave enough to reach across the divide.